Hello, and welcome to Are You Ready? This is a two-part presentation on family, individual, seniors, people with disabilities and special needs being prepared in time of a disaster, wildfires, winter storms, floods, or emergencies. We will cover what you can do as an individual in your home, in your neighborhood, in your community, and in your workplace to prepare for disasters. My name is Peggy Rourke Nichols. I'm a registered nurse with over 30 years experience. I have a deep-rooted passion for emergency preparedness that goes back to 1984 when California had their Quake Safe program. I spent time teaching in nursing homes and schools and extended care facilities about what to do when the big one would hit for Southern California. Over the years, I've used that as a platform to build this new program on emergency preparedness. We will be covering what we may face as a community in case of wildfires, winter storms, or floods. These are the three types of disasters that can hit in our county. There are many more, too many to count right here. I chose to focus on these three at this time. The goal today in part one is to encourage you to develop a plan for yourself, your family, and your pets. Part two will focus on seniors, people with special needs and disabilities in an emergency. The information shared today can be extended to your workplace, your school, and your place of worship if you choose. I'll be using Are You Ready? A Guide to Citizen Preparedness from FEMA. I'll also be using materials from the American Red Cross. These and many other publications are available free of cost from you. You can go to www.ready.gov, www.redcross.org. Also call 1-800-BE-READY or 1-800-237-3230. Helpful customer service representatives are waiting for your call. They can provide you with as many as 32 copies of the book, Are You Ready? There's a free DVD, Getting Ready for Disasters, One Family's Experience. Again, completely free of charge. They have pamphlets covering almost any natural disaster or man-made disasters, any situation that you need information about. It's a great example of our tax dollars at work. And at the end, if you have any questions or comments, my email will be available, and you can email them to me and I will respond. I hope you're as excited as I am about learning how to prepare for wildfire, winter storm, and flood emergencies. My motto has always been, awareness is the first step and preparedness is the key. So let's get started. Living in Calaveras County presents us with many natural disaster challenges. We will focus on three that can face us: wildfires, winter storms, and flooding. Emergency planning for these can be a springboard for planning for any natural disaster. Individuals and families can cope with any disaster by preparing in advance and working together as a team. If you follow the steps and create an individual or family disaster plan, you will be your best ally in protecting yourself and your family when disaster strikes. One of the most important parts of your disaster kit is a battery, power, or wind-up radio. Our local radio stations have made a commitment to our community to broadcast any disaster information. Their numbers are KVML 1450 AM, KKBN 93.5 FM, and KZSQ Star 92.7. If you pre-mark them on your radio, you can dial them in anytime the TV is out, and they will keep you informed as to what's going on. I'll use this just to show you right now. This is a hand crank radio. You just wind it up, and you can get a signal for as long as you have someone who's willing to wind it. And that way you don't have to worry about batteries, and it has a solar charge on it. We now have a reverse 911 system in place via the Calaveras Dispatch Center. They used it for the first time this past winter when the floods hit in, I believe it was Valley Springs. If you're in the white pages, you will be notified either your direct neighborhood, a larger region, or the whole county. And they will give you instructions as to what's happening, where to go, or whether you should stay in shelter in place. If there is an emergency, the sheriff will notify you. The other way they'll do it is someone will knock on your door, and that's if there's an immediate evacuation order in place. You may expect a uniformed officer to come to your door and speak to you, or they may be an officer in plain clothes. During the Old Gulch fire, we had a narcotics officer from Oakland who came to our front door and told us to leave. Being the skeptical person that I was, I insisted that he identify himself, and once he did, my husband and I understood the seriousness of the situation, and we left within 30 minutes. He then placed yellow caution tape across our house, indicating that we had left. So remember, during a time of disaster, it's important to watch TV or listen to your radio so you have good communication from the dispatch centers to what's going on. If your family is apart when disaster strikes, an important part of your family plan is to have a pre-designated meeting area. Let's say you're at work and your daughter is at school and a disaster occurs in between the two of you. If you have a plan in place ahead of time, you know that you're either to go to the neighbor's house or meet at Aunt Jane's. And if you have that information and talk about it ahead of time, your daughter won't be so upset and you won't be stressed out wondering where she is. During a disaster, the phone lines are often jammed. Another important part of your family plan is to have an out-of-state contact. That can be a family member or a friend, someone who lives in Colorado, New York, Washington State, and everybody in the family knows to call that person and check in with them. They keep track of who's called in and checked in, and then they can relay information. The last thing you want to do during a disaster is jam up the phone lines when they might be needed for official communications. Cell phones and social media are a new way of communicating during a disaster. This requires cell phone towers being in place and the internet being available. Oftentimes, those are the last things to go down. There's been many stories lately on the internet of people being saved by someone calling 911 on their behalf, and they've been able to go and take care of them. If that is the situation, make sure that you have someone in the house who is monitoring the computer and can get communication out. Drawing a floor plan of your home will help you during an emergency if you have a fire or you need to evacuate. This is something that you want to do as a family so that you have each room marked out and you have 2 exits from each room available at all times. If there's a home fire, you might want to communicate in your plan that we're going to meet 2 houses down underneath the old oak tree so you can do a head count and make sure that everyone's gotten out. It's important that you teach your children how to call 911 in an emergency. A landline or a hardwired phone is an important part of living in Calaveras County. I know a lot of households have gone strictly to cell phones now, but this is still the good old standby. Oftentimes, the phone lines are the last thing standing, except maybe in a wildfire. You can practice having your child call 911 by unplugging the phone and having them dial 911 and having a pretend conversation with the operator. You can do role playing if your child's old enough to understand that. Calling 911 is one of the most important things you can ever teach your child for almost any life situation that comes along. When you're having your family meeting and making a family plan, you want to designate someone to take a Red Cross first aid course, and they also need to learn how to do CPR. You're hoping that in a time of crisis that medical care will be available to you, but if not, and someone in the household has taken a Red Cross first aid course, they can put together a first aid kit, and if the worst case scenario occurs, they can do CPR. Your family first aid kit is very, very important. And if someone takes a class, you've already got to jump on that. We'd like to talk a little bit, what I'd like to talk about to you right now is your family disaster kit. There's many ways that you can assemble a disaster kit. I have a few examples here. I call this the roll and go can. In case you have to leave, if you have a truck, you can take this with you. I call this the grab and go kit for kids because they need to have a sense of feeling that they're contributing when there is a disaster. However you package your disaster kit is up to you as a family. The most important thing is that you take the time as a family to discuss it. It's important to keep enough supplies in your home for 72 hours minimum. We found out during the winter storm of 2010 that having a full week's supply of food, water, pet food, medicine, and anything else we needed was more appropriate as the trucks weren't able to get up to the store to restock. Since we had our food in place for a full week, we were well prepared. If you want to have a nice food supply, you want to rotate it every 6 months. It's important to take the time to label your cans. When they go into your food supply kit, you can just write the date on the top, and then you rotate these out every 6 months along with your water. You need to provide food for your family. This isn't time to experiment with foods that your family may not eat. Count on the staples in your pantry, what you're usually used to eating, and that will get you through. Another important part of your emergency preparedness kit is to have a sturdy can opener. A lot of cans now come with pull tops, but as you can see, some cans still require can openers. If you have a manual can opener in your disaster kit, you'll be able to access the food that you have. Fruit roll-ups, granola bars, some sweet treats are always good to have on hand to supplement your disaster foods. Let's take some time to talk about water needs. During a disaster, the water requirement is 1 gallon of water per person per day, and that's not only for drinking but also for sanitation. It's important to date and store your water clearly so that you don't have any concerns about when your water is going to expire. This is a bottle of water that we bought today. So today is August, September, October, November, December, January. February is when it would have to be rotated. If you're unsure about your water supply, you can always purify your water. And there's 4 different ways to purify water. I have a gallon jug of water here to represent that you need 1 gallon of water per person per day and pet in the household. To purify your water, there's one method, and that's the straight boiling method. And what you do is boil your water over your camp stove or your wood stove for a full minute. You add a minute for every 1,000 feet of elevation. We live at 4,000 feet, so I would boil the water for 5 minutes. You let it cool off, and then it's drinkable. Your water will taste better after it's cooled off if you pour it from one container to another and oxygenate it. If you've had stored water for about 6 months, it may taste a little stale. You can also pour that back and forth in between 2 containers, and that will help you oxygenate it and refresh the water. The second way to purify your water is with water purification tablets. These are very important to use. You can use these if you don't have kidney or liver disease. If you have kidney or liver disease, do not use these tablets. They contain iodine and they can be extremely harmful to your health. But if you're a healthy family and no one's sick, this is always a good thing to have in your kit. Another way to take care of your contaminated water supplies is with bleach. And I know that makes a lot of people nervous, but it's really a very simple process. Our bleach container here has a straw attached to it, and as a former nurse, I know how to use a straw as a dropper. You would just dip it in your bleach container with your finger over the top, and you would drop 16 drops of water into the container. So it's 16 drops of water to 1 gallon. You would stir it up, and after 30 minutes, you would open up the container, smell it, and if you don't smell any chlorine, then you want to repeat that process one more time. Another 16 drops of bleach, stir it up and let it sit. And that should be more than adequate enough to replenish your water supply. If you don't have enough on hand when the disaster strikes, or if it's a longer period of time in which you have run out of water, you can purify what you have in place. The fourth way of taking care of your water needs is through distillation. And that's a process that you're going to need a few pieces of equipment for. You need pots. You need a pot with a lid, a cup, and some string, and you need a heat source. Part of your disaster kit, you should plan on using either the wood stove in your house, your camp stove, or outside you can use your charcoal grill. I have to stress, never, ever, ever use a charcoal grill inside the house for heating or cooking. It's one of the most devastating news stories you'll ever hear is when someone has brought their barbecue inside and they want to cook. So to distill your water, You have your heat source right here, which is a camp stove. We would use inside in a well-ventilated area, or we'd use outside in a sheltered area. You have a big pot of water, and you bring it to a rapid boil. You invert your lid, and you tie the cup so it hangs down at the bottom of the lid. The vapor from the boiling water comes up, it hits the lid, and then the vapor turns back into water and comes into your cup. A full boil of 20 minutes will help you achieve that goal. Water is the most important thing in your emergency kit. You don't ever want to ration your water unless you are told to do so by authorities. You can get by with a minimum of 1 quart of water a day for drinking, but children and pregnant women should never limit their water. If you have medical reasons to limit your water, you need to keep that in mind. But a gallon a day per person in the household should be more than enough to get you through any emergency. Let's talk about food in a disaster. I have several examples here on the table of easy and portable foods. You can think about who needs the food in the family and prioritize. Food you can ration. Most people can get by on half of their normal caloric intake during a disaster. If you're pregnant, if you're a child, or if you have a specific illness, you may have a certain caloric requirement that you must maintain. If so, it's your responsibility as a family to make sure that you have those supplies on hand. I have a food box right here, and then I have food up here, and these are all non-perishable foods. Like I said, don't experiment. Get what your family likes and you know they're going to eat. If you want to try dehydrated food, I would pick a night at home and say we're having a dehydrated dinner. Let's try it out. Some families don't mind, some families do. You want to keep your canned goods stored in a dry place where the temperature is fairly stable. Keep it in a closed plastic container or a metal container. Again, you want to rotate your food every 6 months. Some people keep a list on the inside of their cupboard door that tells them when their food and water is going to expire, and it makes it easier to keep track of what's in your pantry and what needs to be rotated out. The food in the refrigerator may be used as long as you can keep your refrigerator food chilled. We finally had a use for our giant stainless steel bowls last winter when the power was out for 5 days. I filled them up with snow every morning and alternated them in the shelf, and the food was really, really cold the whole time the power was out. We didn't lose anything at all. Your freezer food may be used as long as it's refrigerator temperature. The whole thing about food is when in doubt, throw it out. Make sure you inspect your cans every time that you're rotating them out. Look for rust, look for swollen cans, and look for expiration dates. Those are all a good guideline for what to know to have in your emergency kit. You can have high-energy foods like peanut butter, as long as nobody's allergic to it, jelly, low-sodium crackers, granola bars, trail mix, hard candies, instant coffee, tea, cereal, and powdered milk. If you have a baby in the family, again, it's your responsibility to make sure that you have baby formula and baby food in the kit. Those little guys need your help. If you're a nursing mother, make sure you have enough calories to produce the milk that you need to take care of your child during a disaster. One good thing about a disaster is it brings neighborhoods together. And food is part of that socialization. If you find yourself in an extended power outage, go out and talk to your neighbors, have someone fire up their outside grill, and pull what's in your freezers out and have a big grill party. Grilling your meat, you can then put it in your refrigerator and it will last a little bit longer. But it's also a good way to know who's in the neighborhood, who needs help, and you can talk about what's going on. Planning ahead until the outside agencies can come to help you is what's going to help you and your family during a disaster. The next part of your family disaster kit is first aid supplies. I'd like to refer again to the responsible family member you've appointed to take a Red Cross first aid course. They'll have a first aid book, and that can outline what some of your supplies should be. With my latex allergy, I can't just go out and buy a first aid kit. I've had to assemble my own. Some of the things that you want to have on hand are gloves, antibiotic, bandages, splinter removals, scissors, gauze, triangular wraps, ace wraps, ice packs, bug repellent, sunscreen, liquid hand soap, and other items specific to your family needs. You'll also want to include vitamins and over-the-counter pain relievers, antacids, anti-diarrheal medicines. Heat packs are helpful. Tums for the tummy, because that's usually what's going on somewhere in a disaster. Someone's got an upset stomach. Again, the whole idea is to make it specific to your family needs. Prescription medications for specific families should be placed aside but not stored. Prescription medicine has to be maintained in a certain temperature as indicated by the packaging. What I've done is I have an example here of what some of my prescription medications are. And I keep all my medications together in the bathroom. Well, not in the bathroom, you can't store them there. I keep them in the bedroom because you can't put your medications in the bathroom, it's too humid. And I have them always ready to go. This year, me, the nurse, made a huge mistake. I had an anaphylactic episode in Angels Camp, and I pulled out my EpiPen to give myself my injection, and I was a little bit foggy. The paramedic pointed out to me that it had expired. Well, the new box of epinephrine was sitting at home waiting to be replaced in my kit. It's really important to pay attention to your expiration dates. And I'm not too embarrassed to use myself as an example, because a nurse should know better, but I'm also a human being. So if your family takes prescription medications, it's very important to make sure that you have those ready to go. If a winter storm is coming, you might have a few days' notice to be able to call the pharmacy and ask to get an extra supply in hand of your prescription medications. In case of a wildfire or a flood, you may only have a few minutes to scrape together the most essential things you need. Remember, prescription medications are an essential part of your first aid kit. As we're referring to the family emergency kit, there are some specific tools that you want to have. In here I have goggles, safety goggles, because if you're in a situation where you have a lot of debris, you want to protect your eyes and not cause any further injury. I have gloves to protect my hands. As you can see over here, I have my own pair of shoes because I go barefoot all the time. If there's a disaster, I want my shoes ready to go, and they're right here in my kit. You should have a full change of clothes and shoes for everybody in the family. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll get back to tools. You want to make sure you have a whistle, you have a compass, you have scissors, safety pins. This is one of my favorites, is my handy dandy little camp shovel in the kit, and you want to have pliers. The pliers are very, very essential to any household. That responsible person who did the first aid class, they might want to also be the responsible person to learn how to turn off the water main if it's indicated. Do not turn your utilities off unless the authorities tell you to do so. We have a wrench already in our water box so that if we have to turn the water off at the main, we can do so. We also have a wrench tied to our hot water heater so that if we have to turn the water off at the hot water heater, the wrench is already there. In a time of crisis, you may not think, but you can be on automatic pilot. So this wrench could become your best friend. You also want to have duct tape. You want to have plastic sheeting, a small fire extinguisher. If you don't know how to use it, call your fire station and they'll teach you how to use your fire extinguisher. Everyone in the family should know how to use it, especially in the winter time. If you're having fires in your wood stove, you have more of a fire hazard. If you're using a kerosene heat source, you have more of a fire hazard. Everyone should have a fully charged fire extinguisher, know how to use it, and your fire station will teach your family how to do so. Another thing that you should have as part of your emergency kit are kitchen supplies. Again, that wonderful manual can opener, mess kit, paper plates, cups, utensils, all-purpose knives, liquid hand washing soap, salt, pepper, and sugar, aluminum foil, plastic wraps, plastic bags, a portable cook stove to be used. This is our Coleman camp stove here. I'm not endorsing any specific product. And we also have a supply of propane on hand. Again, a cook stove should be used outside or in a well-ventilated area. You need to have hand sanitizer, a dish soap, and a dish pan. The other good thing to have are sanitation supplies. People don't think about their bathroom facilities being impacted by a disaster, but it's very, very possible. I have over here a gotta go pot. And this is what this is right here, a gotta go kit. It's a 5-gallon plastic drum, and inside it has plastic bags, bleach, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and there's even a company that sells toilet lids that you can sit on with this. I know it doesn't sound very appealing, but if you're without a toilet facility, you're going to want to be able to do something about that. And it's always important in any disaster situation to be washing your hands frequently. If you're in a flood situation and you're touching contaminated water, you want to make sure you're doing that. One of the most important things to stress today are the household documents that you should have with you at all times, ready to go in case of disaster. These include, but are not limited to, personal identification for each family member, a copy only, never the originals. The originals should be in a safe deposit box. Cash, traveler checks, and credit cards, copies of birth certificates, marriage certificates, wills, driver's license, social security card, passports, durable power of attorneys, tax records, emergency contact and phone numbers are essential. You need a map of your area that's pre-marked with the disaster location of the shelter where you might need to go to, extra house keys, extra car keys, and the name of your doctor. Clothing and bedding should be provided for every family member, and this is a grab-and-go kit of bedding and clothing for the family. We only have a few minutes left. I think it's really essential that we talk about children in disaster. Children are going to look to their parents for help during a disaster. Again, I urge you to call the FEMA number and get their information or the information from the Red Cross on helping children prepare for a disaster. If you're calm, they'll be calm. Empowering a child during a time of disaster will help them feel much, much better afterwards. And Tigger is here because everyone needs comfort during a time of disaster, and that's what the kids need in their kits. That information is available from FEMA. The last thing we're going to touch on are pets. They're a part of your household. I've made a pet grab-and-go kit here. It has all the pet information. It has pet food. It has their vaccination records, who their veterinarian is, extra leashes, dog foods, treats, and dishes for their dog food and for their water. There's a little bleach container in there, too, to wash their dishes. If you have to evacuate, it's important to have your kit in a situation that you can take it with you. The garbage can may not work, but the knapsack will. I'm afraid that we're running out of time and we won't be able to finish with specifics about wildfires, floods, and emergencies, but all of that information is available through your FEMA and Red Cross. If you call these numbers posted right here, they're waiting to hear from you. They will send you whatever you want, free of cost. I really appreciate your time today. This is something very important to all of us. The winter storms of 2010, and we are in wildfire season now. It's your responsibility as a family to sit down, develop a plan, and execute it. Practice it often. Hopefully you'll never need it, but if you do, you will be aware and you will be prepared. Thank you very much for your time, and again, my email will be available if you have any questions.